The soundbite, "America wins either way," sounds like a contradiction in American foreign policy. On one hand, the administration threatens war. On the other, it pursues peace negotiations. To the casual observer, this looks like confusion or hypocrisy. The reality is that these are not opposing strategies but two sides of the same coin: economic statecraft designed to exhaust an adversary without triggering a costly regional escalation. Whether Iran chooses regime collapse through sanctions or a frozen conflict via negotiation, the outcome serves American strategic interests by degrading Tehran's capacity to project power while preserving American resources and avoiding direct military entanglement in another Middle Eastern quagmire. For decades, the prevailing logic of Washington was that security required constant engagement abroad. The strategy assumed that if America could maintain a heavy military footprint across the region, it would dictate outcomes. But a 20-year review reveals a different reality. An Asian foreign minister once observed that the United States has been engaged in fighting but not winning for 2 decades. Despite committing billions more than Russia in Syria and maintaining a massive presence from Iraq to Afghanistan, Washington failed to secure decisive leverage or prevent regional dynamics dictated by Russian, Turkish-Iranian alignments. The result was a state of perpetual conflict where American resources were drained without achieving the strategic goals that justified the expenditure. This historical context explains why the current approach feels so different, yet remains consistent in its ultimate aim. The shift is not away from protecting national interests, but rather toward redefining what those interests actually are and how best to secure them against modern rivals who operate with fewer constraints than Washington does. In 2017, a former Secretary of Defense noted that the United States was fighting wars without ever winning peace. That assessment has only become more urgent as global power dynamics have shifted toward multipolarity, where American dominance is no longer guaranteed by sheer military mass alone. The new strategic framework explicitly rejects this burden of global policing in favor of protecting domestic soil and leveraging economic tools to project influence. This approach allows for maximum pressure on an adversary's economy regardless of their diplomatic choices, creating a scenario where the United States does not need to choose between war or peace because both serve the same long-term objective: asymmetric exhaustion. The 2025 National Security Strategy explicitly equates national security with protecting domestic soil rather than holding up the world like Atlas. This document serves as the primary anchor for understanding why Washington is pivoting away from kinetic military force toward economic and industrial policies that can degrade an adversary's capacity to act aggressively without requiring American boots on the ground. Quick resource note: I keep a curated set of Amazon search links in the description for books, gear, and tools relevant to this channel's topics. Some are affiliate links, so I may earn a commission at no extra cost to you. Please consider supporting the channel by using those links if you find something useful. Consider how this dual-track strategy functions in practice against a rival state like Iran. The first path involves regime change through sanctions, often referred to as maximum pressure. This is not merely about punishing a government for its behavior. It is a calculated effort to degrade the target's oil revenue and financial infrastructure until the cost of maintaining regional aggression becomes unsustainable for the leadership itself. By cutting off access to global markets and freezing assets, Washington forces Tehran into a position where every decision regarding proxy groups or nuclear development carries an immediate economic penalty that accumulates over time. The goal is not necessarily total collapse, but rather a slow erosion of the state's ability to fund its strategic ambitions without external support. The second path involves negotiation leading to a frozen conflict. If diplomatic talks proceed, they likely result in a status quo where Iranian regional aggression is contained through economic constraints rather than military defeat. In this scenario, Washington accepts that it cannot force regime change or total compliance, but can secure enough concessions to limit Tehran's freedom of action for years at a time. The value here lies not in a final victory on the battlefield, but in buying time and limiting the adversary's operational reach while American forces remain focused elsewhere. Both paths rely on the same mechanism, forcing an adversary to expend resources while minimizing American exposure to direct conflict or escalation spirals that could drag allies into wider wars. This distinction is critical for understanding why policy appears inconsistent when viewed through a traditional lens of war versus peace. When you hear threats of war alongside offers of peace talks, it isn't a sign that Washington is confused. It is a feature of a strategy designed to keep an adversary off balance and economically drained, regardless of their reaction. The United States is no longer fighting proxy wars for regime change if economic leverage can achieve similar strategic degradation with less risk. This changes how you should interpret future diplomatic breakthroughs or escalations in the Middle East. They are not about peace or war in traditional terms, but about which form of pressure, sanctions versus containment, is most effective at that moment to exhaust a rival without triggering a catastrophic conflict. The implications extend beyond just Iran and touch on broader alliance dynamics as well. American ambitions have outpaced resources for years now, and confrontations with Tehran have alienated Arab allies who are increasingly seeking accommodation rather than relying solely on Washington for security guarantees. Recent analysis confirms that the new strategy prioritizes burden sharing among allies and leverages economic policies to project influence, moving away from reliance solely on military force. This shift acknowledges that in an era of great power competition, preserving American strategic capacity is more important than winning every local dispute through direct intervention. The win condition is no longer territorial conquest or regime collapse, but the preservation of American strength while denying rivals the ability to dictate terms through force. The 2025 National Security Strategy uses the phrase "we want" 38 times to outline these new goals, emphasizing a future where security is defined by resilience and economic leverage rather than forward-deployed combat units. This reflects a fundamental change in how Washington views its role on the global stage. The United States will no longer fight every battle for everyone else if it can achieve strategic objectives through financial pressure and diplomatic isolation instead. For viewers following global events, this matters because it signals that future shifts in U.S. policy toward Iran or other rivals should be read as adjustments to an economic statecraft playbook rather than sudden changes of heart or confusion about where the country stands on moral issues. The soundbite. America wins either way is not a promise of total victory, but a statement of strategic endurance. It means Washington has decided that it can achieve its core security interests by exhausting rivals economically without getting dragged into another quagmire where American soldiers pay the ultimate price for limited gains. Whether through sanctions or negotiated freezes, the outcome serves U.S. strategic interests by degrading Tehran's capacity to project power while preserving American resources and avoiding direct military entanglement in another Middle Eastern conflict zone. This is not a moral victory but a calculated calculation of incentives that defines realpolitik in the 21st century. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I am a one-person team working hard to make each video better than the last. Subscribe if you found value. It is the best way to show support. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. See you in the next video.